All right. Well, hey, Facebook, uh, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. We are here with Grove Sessions once again. It's been a little while since we've done this, but I'm super excited about today's conversation. Something a little bit unique, something we haven't done yet. But I want to introduce a number of people. But first, I am Rick Coughlin. I'm the CEO and co founder of Grove Studios. We started Grove Studios out of a passion, and we founded it because we wanted to enable communities and people to create music and amplify their voices in the world, because we believe amplifying voices and creating music makes the world a better place. That's where our heart lies. And so our series on Grove Sessions is intended to highlight the great work that people are doing, performance artists, music educators, podcasters, producers, engineers, and other creatives in that space that include all of the creatives that work around these industries that we serve. And we're really excited about today's session. Please consider supporting the creative community and helping us recover from the COVID-19 shutdown. We posted in all platforms a Cash App link if you would like to donate. That it's Cash App /$ Grove Studios. Any support that you give goes directly towards supporting our live streams and our Grove Sessions performances in our courtyard at our location on Railroad Street in Ypsilanti, Michigan. So we really appreciate everybody here joining us. And I'm here with two co-hosts, my co-founder, Eric Friebel. He's also the director of community engagement for Grove Studios. And I'm also here with our moderator. That's Rod Wallace. He's a producer and engineer, program director for EMU Upward Bound. He's also our director of education programs here at Grove Studios. He's a PhD student of urban education with a focus on music technology and hip hop as pedagogy. Eric is going to introduce the panel, so I'd be happy to pass that off to Eric. And go ahead, Eric.
Cool. Thanks, Rick. Appreciate it. Welcome, everybody. Really happy to have you all here. Excited about the topic that we've got today, music, basically, and how it relates to music education during the pandemic and everything that that's been going on. As far as technology-wise, changing curriculums and just the methodology that we use to teach our kids and students of all ages, really. So in no particular order, I'll introduce our guests. Today we have Caroline Fitzgerald, who's a music teacher at Scarlett Middle School here in Ann Arbor, Michigan, with Ann Arbor Public Schools. She's also the 2019 DTE Energy Foundation Teacher of the Year. We have Chris Barrick, who is the director of the School of Music and Dance at Eastern Michigan University in Ypsilanti. Sean Dobbins, who is on the line with us as well, is the associate professor of jazz at Indiana University, the Jacobs School of Music. He's also a professional drummer here and plays with numerous bands around Southeast Michigan. Scott Hawkins, band director with Ypsilanti Community High School in Ypsilanti, Michigan. Steve Summers, basically a jack of all trades. We've known Steve for quite a few years now. Steve is a guitarist, composer with the Steve Summers Band, among numerous other projects. He's also an instructor at Washtenaw Community College, and he's the instructor with Ypsilanti Symphony Orchestra, the jazz program there, and also owner of Alley Records. Steve's a busy man. And we also have Victoria Tillman. Victoria is a jazz pianist, composer, oboe and English horn player, and she's a teacher with Little Bands, littlebands.com or littlebandsmusic.com. You can check them out. And now I'll pass it off to our moderator, Rod Wallace. Rod, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you very much. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak to all of you. You're also wonderfully accomplished, that I'm really anxious to hear some things from you today, just with regard to your viewpoints about the intersection between music and education. So I'll have some questions for you. What I would ask you to do is I can see each of your names. If you would like to respond to the question that I ask, I would just ask that you unmute yourself, and then I'll call your name, and then you're welcome to respond as you will. So, and again, I would like to thank Rick and Eric for this opportunity to, speak to the public and support Grove Studios by just being curious. I have so much curiosity about the different viewpoints and things that the music community is making. So I'm really interested in this. I guess my first question is, it's completely ridiculous to discount what we've all encountered in the past 5 months now, 5.5 months or so. I guess my first question is, what do you believe has been the role of music in how American society has navigated this time? What role do you believe music has played, and have there been any moments that just made you proud to be a representative of the music community during the last few months? Scott?
Yeah, I mean, my whole family's pretty musical, and one of the things that me and my dad did was we went out. I went to my parents' house, and I played the tuba, and he plays the trumpet. And we would just play out on the front yard, and some of the neighbors would come along. We'd play things like, like when baseball started, we played "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" and just simple songs like that. And we'd gather like a small crowd of a couple dozen. And beyond that, even just talking about music that's come out, some of my favorite music that's come out over this that's just extremely relevant with not only COVID, but also with Black Lives Matter and all those other things with like Run the Jewels 4 and other albums that are just representative and kind of break down what's going on in our society and put emotions into the music, which is the reason I think a lot of us like to teach music and be musicians.
Sure. Thank you, Scott. Caroline?
Yeah, so specifically for my students, I know that music education has been a valuable part of their day because it's the time that they get to step away from the computer screen and actually be creative and just kind of take a breath and get away from all the virtual learning. That is fine, but and then also it's a way for them to interact with their peers when I put their little concert together virtually and they hadn't seen each other for so long, and they got to hear each other and see each other. And I know it was really special for a lot of them.
Thank you. Anyone else? Chris?
Yeah, I'll chime in. You posed the question to us as members of the music community, and I think the word community really says it all. It really helps us to feel like who we are, and whether we are music consumers or music producers, or often we are both consumers and producers. I think this year of 2020 has showed us how much we can miss those aspects of music, maybe live concerts, live performance, ensembles that we can't do. But it's perhaps driven us to consume music in other ways. I haven't been able to go see concerts, but I found ways to dig into archives and explore artists' entire catalogs since I'm not going anywhere, as well as to create art off the stage. I've seen so many artists where, bands did a recording project and they're all at their homes or in their home studios and they're collaborating online. I got a chance to do that with some old friends and colleagues this summer, and finding new ways to create art, to create music, and to disseminate it, even though we can't hold a live concert. So I think it's provided some serious challenges, but also some real art and solutions in that too.
Absolutely. Steve?
Yeah, I've been doing actually a fair amount of live streaming. Been doing a solo guitar, playing for 1 hour once a week for probably close to 3 months now. And then recently also did a live stream with basically a smaller jazz band that I have. And we, just in the backyard, We did a couple live streams, and one of them had over close to 6,000 views. And we're starting to really do a lot online, where we're in touch with different types of different groups. There's a lot of jazz groups, Facebook groups for jazz or for classical guitar. So just sharing the music that way through the live streams. I think it's been something that a lot of people enjoy, because they're not able to get out nearly as much and see live music in the real world. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the live streaming of music has really skyrocketed just across the board. I think about so many things that have happened live online, be it Instagram Live or Facebook or other areas, and it's been hugely important. I'm really curious about, as far as all of us being educators, in lieu of the change and it appearing as though we may still continuing to, we may still continue to have to follow these systems. How has what you teach changed? I'm really curious about how you've adjusted your practice around music education. Go ahead, Steve.
okay, well, mine has changed quite a bit, because my main class at Washtenaw Community College is the. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Oops. Okay. Is the jazz combo class, which has traditionally been like more of a performance, sort of like a band class, jazz band class, where we're getting ready for a performance at the end of the semester, and then doing some things throughout the semester, community events and stuff. But that really changed, pretty drastically, with not being able to do a performance. And I was able to teach a summer jazz combo class, which went quite well, because during the winter it was sort of really abrupt all of a sudden, where we just sort of went online and changed things. But one thing we've been doing is having recording projects online, where I send out a track, like a click track with a rhythm, and then the students take that track, and then they add a solo to it, and then they send me back their solo or their parts for the song. And then I'm able to mix it in the studio here, Valley Records, and come up with actually some pretty nice recordings. And then, so that's one of the main things. And then another thing is just being able to look a little bit more at the history of the music, the history of the different songs, and also spending more time on the theory and the solo concepts, because often in a band situation where we're really just rehearsing, we can't really do. I can ask the students to listen to things on their own, and they have listening assignments, but whether they really do that or not varies from student to student, of course. So, but at WCC, we're calling the class virtual, which means we have to do at least 50% of it as a Zoom meeting. And I usually do more like 75%. And then, so it's not just like an online class, which is usually you just do the work and you don't really even see the other students. But the virtual format definitely seems to be better for the jazz combo class.
Wow, some significant changes.
Yeah, so those main things are being able to look more at the history and the theory.
Sure.
And also work on recording projects, which helps the students get more familiar with, possibly being able to do live streams on their own, things like that.
Absolutely. Caroline?
I've actually enjoyed taking a step back from the ensemble focus that we have in traditional bands, the kind of program that I'm in, just being in Ann Arbor. It's allowed me to really focus on the individual student and build up fundamentals. We've been working a lot on rhythm. We've been working a lot on notes and fingerings and all those things that so often kind of get breezed over when the focus is on the ensemble. So I found it actually kind of nice.
Fantastic. Victoria, you have something to share?
Yes. And so things that have changed for me is, well, obviously not being in person with a group of students or with an individual student. And the virtual learning has allowed us to work on a little bit more on music theory as well, like doing flashcards. One thing I do like to do though, like with virtual learning, is I just try to recognize the fact that they are human beings and they're not robots. And so I sort of have a more holistic approach to it. Sometimes I'm just like, as long as we get some playing done today, you know, then we've succeeded, because it can be hard on young children, you know? And yep, that's what I have to add.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. Meeting the holistic needs of the students, meeting the holistic needs of everyone is important at this point. Anyone else have anything to add about that? Scott, you had something?
Yeah, honestly, for us, it's been kind of devastating, because when it first started happening, we couldn't, I teach in a very low income area. We couldn't rely on students having access to internet, let alone a home computer. Almost 90% of our band students have loaner instruments that remained at the school. And the majority of my teaching is basically relationships, where I'm next to them and I'm the cheerleader and I'm pushing them to learn the next note, because they're dealing with so much stuff. So when I put out music theory and rhythms online, it's not the same as, you know, having the energetic teacher next to you, kind of boosting your self-esteem and really pushing you along. So it was really hard getting feedback and any response at all from any of the kids going into the end of the school year here. We're hoping things will be a little bit different. Some people might be a little bit more adjusted going into the fall, but as of this point, it's going to be a whole new world and we're not really sure what to expect.
Absolutely. One of the things that I've seen happen is how, like Steve talked about, utilizing click tracks, and people play and they submit their music back. I recently worked with a teacher on teaching her students about Reaper, which is a free digital audio workstation that allows you all the functionality of virtually any other digital audio workstation. And she was able to do some things there. I'm curious about how technology can be used. You may have already used it, or you're looking forward to using it as students return. How can technology kind of close some of those gaps? And I know, Scott, you know, there's access problems that are still going to continue to be issues unless we're very strategic in Ypsilanti with Ypsilanti students. But what kind of technology are you guys using to interface with students and to keep things moving in a direction where they can learn about music and they actually can create music? Chris?
Yes, and I'm speaking not as the teacher of record, so to speak, but as the administrator of those who are doing the teaching for a variety of forms of music teaching at EMU. And we've had to embrace technology in a number of ways. We're all becoming Zoom experts, obviously. Simple things like helping the students to find a good USB microphone if they're taking lessons virtually. Yeah. Our faculty have found that that's the number one thing they can do to improve the experience on both ends, for both the teacher and the student, to have a decent microphone so they're actually hearing what's going on in the other room. And it's amazing how much bandwidth has become an issue. Is that doing a high quality Zoom interface or other kinds of forms of online teaching, how much can be limited if you don't have that good quality. Having keyboards available for students, even if they're not fully weighted keys, even if they're only so many octaves, whether they're studying music theory or obviously piano classes and stuff, having a keyboard is helpful. I think whether you're using a USB microphone or, you know, you mentioned Reaper, having some experience with a digital audio workstation, you know, just having some basic GarageBand or Audacity kind of knowledge is so helpful to be able to make a decent quality recording to crop out the count off at the beginning or whatever you need to do to trim it and do just the basic editing. They don't need to be Pro Tools wizards to learn music or to teach music. But I think some of those digital music basics are becoming really exposed by how important they are in this current situation.
Anyone else have something to add to that? How we're using technology, Victoria?
One thing that is very interesting to me is how technology has made things a lot more convenient for parents. Parents who may be working out of the home or parents who are working from home. We have 4- and 5-year-olds who have mastered how to use Zoom, mastered how to use Skype and FaceTime. And it used to be the parent sitting through the lesson all the way through. Now the child can log in and call me right at their time and they're ready to rock and roll. Mm. So if there's no trying to rush to go pick them up or rush to, get someone from practice. We've also had entire Zoom, like I'm sure a lot of you have had this, like entire Zoom, like band rehearsals, like when we have a group of people. And so that's convenient too, because a lot of people, their parents work and they're on completely different schedules. And so I guess not having to travel has helped a lot during the pandemic.
Wow. I'm curious about the degree to which popular music has been an entry point for learning for you guys at this point, because it would seem as though I was a high school administrator for several years. I kind of can recall the amount of work that it took to getting students sometimes motivated and integrated into class to learn, and being able to build in certain elements from history, certain elements from current events to get kids really excited about learning, especially for those who may not have been naturally motivated towards music. Have any of you been able to use popular music as an entry point during this time? Or overall, I guess, what's your overall feelings and thoughts about using popular music to get students involved in learning an instrument? Victoria?
Sorry to sort of take over.
Oh, no, that's fine. Please.
Yeah.
We're extremely formal right now. I mean, please feel free.
So one thing that I like to do is I want people to enjoy music. And one of the ways is to give them sort of freedoms that a lot of us may not have had growing up. There are a lot of teachers who are very by the book, and I appreciate that too. But I would say one thing I like to do with my students is they'll pick a song that they enjoy. I'll arrange it for them, maybe in a key that's easier for them to perform in and learn. And that's sort of their treat that they get to work towards for the concert. Like we'll get our music theory done. At the first half of the lesson, we'll get all of our work done. But at the end of the lesson, they get to work on that one song of their choice. And like one of the songs we're working on with a 5-year-old is a Beyonce song. And it's the one thing that sort of gets her through her music theory, because she knows she can work on that song at the end of the lesson. So.
That sounds fantastic. Steve, did you have something to add?
Yeah, in regards especially, to both the jazz and the guitar class, often we do like jazz arrangements, sometimes of popular tunes, like we had a pretty cool version of Purple Haze, a Jimi Hendrix tune, done in sort of a jazz style. And some Herbie Hancock tunes, and some of the younger students seem to really enjoy that style. Even though in the jazz class we try to deal with a wide variety, older swing tunes, bossa nova, Latin tunes, jazz ballads, but some of the newer jazz rock. And a lot of the students, the younger students, a lot of the older jazz songs they've never even really heard before. So we definitely want to expose them to the roots of the music. And but yeah, bringing in some of the the newer styles is definitely can help them just enjoy the whole experience more. So,
Absolutely. Caroline?
Yeah, I love this topic because I blast pop music from my band room, and my room is so far away from everybody else's, but the kids can hear it on their way to band, and they get like pumped up and energized. And then there's so much you can use pop music for. I use it for warm-ups. We vamp like rhythms over and over. We figure out what key it's in. We notate the common melodies. We notate the rhythm beats. There's so many things you can do, and if it's not school appropriate, I put the karaoke version on and have them try to figure out the melody. And then we talk, like, a lot of songs modulate, and we talk about what modulation is, and we talk about how to figure out what major scale or minor scale or pentatonic or whatever kind of scale fits with pop music. And then we have the kids improvise over it, and it just livens up the whole class, and it makes everything so much more fun. And it also gets you to know what the kids are listening to and to relate to them on that level too.
Absolutely. The reason why that's so important in terms of the research that I've done is that music customarily is one of the first victims when it comes to the impact of economics on schools, especially in urban areas. And also, as society has changed, many students don't have the natural other outside entry points for music as well, such as the church. There are many people who I know in the African-American community, many African-Americans in the generations before me, they learned how to play music instruments, not in the schoolhouse, but at church. And that has since changed a bit. So popular music has become more of an entry point for the introduction of, musical skills and things of that nature. I'm also curious about the engagement of music theory and practice with the technology overall, not just in this time of, COVID-19 and things of that nature, but for those of you who may be veteran educators, I'm really curious about how technology has impacted the practice of music education overall. Can you tell me anything about that? Scott?
Scaffolding is kind of a word we use in education that kind of shows like you build a kid from like beginner status, they don't know anything, to like a mastery level where like they can outperform you. And in my band classes, I get kids who've never touched an instrument before. They don't even know the names of the instruments. And I also get kids who've played since 5th grade in church and such. And they're in the same room. So I can't just say, all right, everyone, we're going back to hot cross buns. And I also can't say, all right, here's a grade 3 piece of music. Good luck. So oftentimes I have a computer set up in my room where I'll kind of set them up with an assignment, say, hey, I need to spend 15 minutes on this site, learn how the staff looks like, and some basic sort of notation stuff while I work with these group of people while they're making their first sounds, while another group over there is performing duets from the book I gave them. And then I have another 2 people in a practice room working on the solos that they're going to be performing at a concert coming up. So really it's just, you're juggling 17 different things, and technology is kind of there that helps, educate someone when you have to be doing something else.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of great websites and videos to do that.
Absolutely. Sean, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think, when it comes down to bringing those things together, we talk about education, technology, and music theory. I think it touches on the aspect of student-centered learning, which is where I think that the student grows a lot more. So what's happening is that the student gets the opportunity to own their experience a little bit more and be more creative, versus getting the information from us and trying to remember what we taught them, and looking at it more as a class. We're able to make the education process student centered, so that their creativity is the objective of the experience, versus just getting through the material. So I think that's young. I'm experiencing that with my college students, but even with middle school and high school, that the students are able to explore their education a little bit more, which I think that they own it, and they have sort of they're putting character to what they're learning, and they're starting to understand how it affects them in their future.
Absolutely. I do have a question about, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but in traditional music education, would you say that there is kind of a line of demarcation between more traditional music educators in terms of teaching instruments and scales and things of that nature versus the modern state of music, be it, the MIDI controlled kind of what we call Fruity Loops kind of mindset about music where you have a grid on a screen and you're actually able to insert notes in a scale in order for it to make, I guess, what you would call musical sense. Do you guys experience that at all? Do you experience that like there are some who believe that, the technology has diluted kind of musical quality or the legitimacy of the practice at all? Chris?
Yeah, I'll chime in on that. I think there's some perceptions that is the case for sure. I don't agree with that. I think it's different. Whether you're playing, an acoustic instrument and you're blowing in the mouthpiece or strumming the guitar yourself, or you're programming the music, you're still in the other end creating the art. I think we're debating whether you're holding a paintbrush or a chisel and saying, well, I'm a painter, so I'm a real artist. You're just a sculptor.
Right.
I think they're different forms of the art. There are some people who can do both. Most are kind of more firmly grounded. Whether you're an educator or a student or an artist, you're usually either one camp or the other. And then I think there's some middle ground where they cross over. But I wish we could do away with some of those perceptions and make some of the especially the electronic kind of music that's being programmed now and being created. It's art just like anything else. And I think if those like myself, I do a little bit of that, but I also come from a very traditional background as an educator and a performer. I think the more we resist the other side, the more we're not only alienating those musicians, but we're limiting our own understanding of how music is produced, consumed, enjoyed, performed. And I really admire those kind of crossover artists, whether it's a hip hop producer bringing in, a symphony orchestra or vice versa, for those kind of collaboration concerts where we're showing folks that it's showing the world that we're all musicians. We don't all make the same music. We don't all make it the same way, but it's all valid. And it's all about what comes out the other end.
Absolutely. Caroline?
Yeah, I think I know I work with a lot of traditional old school band directors, and I grew up with an old school band directors, and I thrived in that program. And I love and respect all my colleagues, even if they consider themselves old school. Just old school meaning they have the same rehearsal every day, and they start with a warm up consisting of scales and rhythms, and that's great, and it's valuable, and it teaches a lot of great things. But my sense is the focus is on the ensemble and the final performance. Whereas if you focus on the individual student and what each individual student needs to find joy in creating music, you're going to have to utilize more things like technology, like you said. So I'm not an old school band director. Even though I loved growing up in a program like that, that's not what my students want, and that's not how I teach. So I do make sure to give my students the abilities to keep up when they get to a high school that might have a different kind of teacher. So in terms of scales, in terms of articulation and technique and all that stuff, we do learn all that stuff. I try to teach it to them in a way that is appealing to them, in a way that they enjoy doing, because I think it's all about like creating the love of creating music.
Absolutely. Sean?
Yeah, I really like what Caroline is saying about that. I really agree with her. And I would just add one of the things that I have to remind myself and that I talk to my students about is that I'm not preparing them for 2020 because we're already here. I think that technology is here. Technology is going to be a part of music for years to come. That is a part of what we do. So I think that not only are we preparing students for as performers, but we're also preparing future educators. why would we not make sure that the future tools that they will need, why would we not make sure that they have those things and that they feel comfortable with that? So a lot of it, I think, is on us as educators to realize that we're preparing our kids for 2030 and 2040 and 2050, even though right now, we're already here, and somebody prepared us for right now. And that's why we're here. And so I think it's important to kind of let it's okay to have a foot. Dizzy Gillespie said it best. Have a foot in the past and a foot in the future. And I think that that's important. I do like the traditional ways of teaching, but the way that music has evolved, it's here and it's going to continue to keep evolving. And I think it only helps students when we bring those things into our classrooms, so that they can be prepared for their careers and what their careers are going to look like in the next 10 to 15 years.
Absolutely. Victoria?
I agree that I think music technology, electronic music is definitely necessary in the music scene. And I feel like, for just sort of adding to what you said about people in church learning how to play their instruments and how it's sort of getting away from that. I know a lot of people who, so I've been making beats for about 14 years now. And a lot of the people in that class were African-American males. And you notice how a lot of them weren't in orchestra or band, but that was their way of having an introduction to music. And that's why I think it's very so necessary. Maybe they didn't grow up in the church, but maybe they grew up listening to, De La Soul or Biggie Smalls or something. And so that was their way of being introduced to it. Maybe some of these kids can't afford instruments, And so it's a lot. When I was coming up, being in band meant that you had to have a private teacher. And, it's not doable for a lot of people. People have bills, it's expensive. But another thing with like electronic music is I feel like it sort of does open the door for people to be able to see music in a different way. Different genres are often fused into electronic music. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Any other questions or points about that line? I think that, Chris, you had something else to add?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to revisit one of the other questions we talked about, when you talked about popular music. And I think we're hitting on this with electronic music creation as well. Nowadays we talk about art music versus popular music, and it's almost insinuating that popular music is not art. And it's really a 20th century construct. If we go back about 1,000 years in music history, it was sacred and secular. And the sacred music is where the trained composers were, because the church had money. And secular music were the minstrels going from tavern to town and were self-taught, were the akin of today's popular musicians.
The bards, the bards and stuff.
The bards, exactly.
Absolutely.
But there was also a time when in the classical period, where those classical composers, that was the lay people's music. That was not high society necessarily. You'd go and they'd play the symphony, and if you liked the first movement, you'd hoot and holler and they'd play it again. So it's interesting how we've kind of got different stratifications and layers of culture almost in how we perceive music. But I'm often asked, what is your favorite kind of music? What is your favorite genre of music? And I always give the same answer. I say, good. At the end of the day, I think there's only two kinds of music. I think it's good or bad.
Right.
Whether we're talking about a symphony or a sick beat you're dropping or anything in between, I think we have to look at music with less division in it. And I think that goes to what we were saying with how the music is created and how we perceive it.
Absolutely. Victoria brought up something involving equity issues. She talked about how she makes beats. She's seen music production programs or whatnot, and they mostly engage males. I'm curious about diversity and equity issues in music education, things that you've witnessed and things that you've tried to counteract, and maybe some solutions to those things. And that can be from gender, that can be financial, that can be racial. Tell me what you think. Caroline?
One of the things that immediately comes to my mind is the inequity in terms of ability. Like students aren't allowed to be in band if they don't have experience in band, or students are going to be made to feel bad because they can't read music, which makes them less of a musician, which I think is crazy, but kids believe what they're around or whatever. And so in my program, I try to make everybody feel welcome, and like, it doesn't matter your financial situation, it doesn't matter the color of your skin, it doesn't matter the religion, it doesn't matter where you come from, your culture, whatever. We will celebrate you. We will help you become whoever you want to be. If you can't read music, you will still be able to participate with us. It could be a goal that you're working on, but you do not need to feel any less of a musician just because you do music differently.
Absolutely. Steve?
Yeah, I mean, at Washtenaw Community College, being a community college, we have, of course, students coming in at all different levels, where some have very little experience and then some have had quite a bit. So we do definitely try to encourage, people to participate, all different genders, ages. We also have a program called the Emeritus Program, where students over 65 get basically free tuition to the class at WCC. So there's been quite a few taking advantage of that. So we have students that are over 65. We have also a high school program at WCC, and then regular college age, and then so students could vary from age 14, 15 up to 70, and we actually had a fellow who was in my class. I think he was 73, and he graduated from WCC with his first degree at age 73. And one other thing I did want to mention too, for people out in Facebook land, maybe prospective students, we do have, our classes are still open at WCC.
People can still enroll?
Exactly.
Yep.
Guitar, and probably at Eastern too.
Mm-hmm.
I talked with one of the directors of the jazz band over there today. He helped tune my piano. And I believe he said there's still space in his jazz band. So I know high school is usually pretty well set, but college, we're always looking for more. So
Absolutely. And it teaches so much. One of the things that I've studied is how students who are involved in music, how they deal with the iterative process differently, the trial and error. A lot of my work has been done with music producers, African-American males who are involved in music production, and they have a different understanding of what would be called resilience, academic resilience. And the difficult thing for some is that they have they sometimes kids in general don't translate the resilience in one area to other areas. And that's above and beyond anything else, any gender or race or anything of that nature. But that's kind of the cross that I'm trying to bear in terms of trying to make sure that the students who are interested in making beats, they understand how transferable the skills are and how it teaches math and science skills. And also, when you were talking, Steve, I thought about the intergenerational nature of music as well. Music, I think all people have the ability to benefit from creating something new, and music offers a form for that. I did want to finish the conversation about diversity, though. Anything else involving diversity, issues you've seen, solutions that you may have? Sean, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. A couple of things. I was a part of a youth program, and we had an all-female jazz ensemble come down from Michigan State, and the one of the things that the young lady said is that, when we're all hanging out, sometimes I feel like the guys will come and say, hey, we're all going to a jam session, but they kind of look through me and invite everyone else to go jam, or invite, you know what I mean? And that kind of clicked the light bulb, and just in terms of my own my own curriculum, and I had to kind of look and say, how diverse is my curriculum? So meaning if I'm teaching jazz music, how much of the story am I actually telling? Am I telling the full story? I then looked at some of the jazz books that I was teaching out of and realized there's not even a chapter on women in jazz. If you want to go find out about women in jazz, you have to really search hard, and you have to like get on YouTube, find a Sweetheart's Rhythm or anything, and learn about Hazel Scott or whomever, and it's really hard. So I think that when we talk about getting people involved in things and getting people excited, I think that young ladies, they could become, because it's not, adds to the issue in many ways, is that they can't look on the bandstand and see, so we're lucky to have, to have Victoria and Caroline doing what they're doing right now, because there's a young lady sitting in their classroom saying, oh man, I could actually inspire young people. I could be a teacher someday or whatever. So my only solution, and this is not that it was the greatest thing on earth, it was just something that I thought to do, is I just created a women in jazz segment in the school that I was teaching in that celebrated the contribution, and we played music. And I think that was the starting point. It's completely not the destination, but it's a start of a topic, because when we talk about diversity, we usually talk about race, but we don't talk about gender. And I'm sensitive to that. I have 2 daughters at home, so and a son. But I think that that's a discussion that we need to have, is how do we make sure, because music brings a sort of confidence and a sort of camaraderie, especially jazz music, or all music. I'll say all music, but I do. The gender conversation needs to be on the table, and this time in this COVID has really been great to really think about my own personal curriculum and what I'm talking about. And am I walking the walk? I know I have these beliefs, but how do I change my curriculum to make sure that I'm including these things and really dealing with diversity? And I think the first discussion when we talk about diversity is each teacher has has to take an honest look at their own curriculum and say, am I doing these things? These things I can do, and if some of the curriculum changes are beyond your control, then you got to immediately get to your department chair or whomever and say, we need to add this in, or I believe this needs to be discussed. And I think that that's a major diversity point that we need to make sure that we're consistently talking about.
Absolutely. Just from a production standpoint, I've really been behind and empowered or wanted to empower more women producers and engineers. That's been really fantastic. Shout out to that Blessed Girl and Wonder Girl, both of who I know. Victoria, you have something to add?
Yes, I wanted to sort of add to what Sean was saying about just inclusion and just, diversity and equity. A lot of times people think that the answer to, inclusion is to put everybody at give everybody access to the same things. But if you don't have a level playing field, if someone has years of experience under their belt, and then there's someone who has none, that's not really going to be an effective approach. Another thing I was going to say, adding on to the diversity, is a lot of times just when I was in college, I went to Grand Valley and I finished at Eastern. I got my oboe degree at Eastern, and just the music of people who I identify with was never seen as a priority. And it was always just, I guess, what do you call it when it's not like a required course?
Elective, a novelty?
Yeah, it was always
essential,
elective or a world music, and then it sort of just lumped all of us together, all people of color, when we're all very diverse in our own ways. We all have our own cultures. There are so many different cultures in Africa, and when we were learning about African music, it was problematic in itself because it was called African music, just something as simple as that. Another thing that I just want to say about Sean is just representation was always one thing that Sean did. I'm a former student of Sean Dobbins, and just feeling like there was someone who I could identify with or relate to helped boost my confidence. And it helped me continue with music. A lot of people don't continue for that very reason. Maybe they don't want to be the only Black person in the orchestra. And that can be intimidating, you know? So.
Thank you so very much. Just a couple of other questions. I think that myself and Grove, built into Grove Studios, has core values that reflects its commitment to community. And I guess what can organizations like Grove Studios, how can we better support and engage with the music education programs that are at your schools, at the university, things of that nature, to promote the things that you're trying to accomplish? Sean, go ahead.
I was going to say, first, I just wanted to compliment Grove for this discussion today, and we haven't had a chance to do that. So I just wanted to compliment you, and actually compliment you as a great moderator. It's been a really great conversation. I think having these conversations, but also, right now, to be honest with you, like there's a power to the question that you just asked. There's a certain power to that, meaning that right now we have to all, as a community, send the message out that we're watching TV and we are watching social media and talking and letting them, we're talking about the problems and we're looking for them for the solutions. We're looking for, we get on the news, we get everywhere, we're looking everywhere for the solutions. The solutions lie within us and the solutions lie within our community. A place like Grove, to even want to ask that question, there's a power there, because what happens is that you can have, you can meet with other leaders in education or leaders in all different areas and begin to have collaborations and make the changes that we want. We're in a situation now where we have the resources in a community that we don't have to wait for anyone to make the changes for us. We can make it. We don't have to watch TV and say, you know what they need to do? They need to do this. We should have this. We can do it. We need to have it so we can make it happen. We don't have to wait on anybody. So that question, there's a power behind that. It's not just about, hey, what can we do? Can we offer, free sessions? No, that's like not even that. There's a power behind Grove being a hub of change in the community, and people being able to depend on that to not only just, come and have the experience, but also knowing that there's a change and there's a need in the community, and that Grove wants to be a part of that. So there's a certain power, and I think that having more of these discussions with people and a variety of people, and having these discussions for people to really discuss and articulate some of the things that are happening in their programs gives the answer right there, and everybody can start to join in and give their contributions the best way they can. So that question right there is almost the solution.
Absolutely. I appreciate that response. Anyone else? What else can organizations like Grove do to support your programs? Scott?
We honestly just need to be flooded with anything and everything. Our music programs have been struggling for the past 6 years or so, 7 years, ever since the consolidation between Willow Run and Ipsy. And it's not really much more. Like, we have some wonderful support. We're getting things from the district, but polling kids in the band, showing them that's a good thing, that it's something that they will benefit from, that they will be able to enjoy, not losing them to other districts, just giving them opportunities within Ypsilanti where like, oh, you stayed in band till 9th grade? Wow. Well, now you get to do this. You stayed in band till now? Well, great. Here's a music scholarship that's going to be available to you. Here's something that's going to be, we know that you can't afford lessons. Well, we're here for you. That shiny instrument that you were looking for, well, we can't get you that now, but we're going to help you. We're keeping an eye on somebody. Somebody's going to be able to do something for that. Because really, it's just a lack of access and lack of opportunity that our kids have. They don't have these things. And like, I mean, it can come down to something as simple as you live in an apartment, so you can't practice because your neighbor's something, they don't like you playing. Your parents work the night shift, so they're sleeping during the day, and you can't play during the day. You have a single parent household, so you have to watch your brother and sister after school while your mom works, and all these things multiplied hurt a lot. And I mean, I get to look around at all these wonderful districts around Ypsi and see wonderful band programs, and my kids see it too, and they're like, why can't we do that? And it's a difficult conversation sometimes. And sometimes my answer is, we need to start working a little bit harder, y'all. And sometimes my answer is, well, it's a little more complicated than that. So really just being flooded with people, resources, material, ideas, everything, because the kids need it and the educators in Ypsi need it as well.
Absolutely. I know, and I think I speak for Eric and Rick. For me, and Upward Bound obviously works with the high school. For me, in all things that we do, the school system is kind of ground zero in terms of resources that are available and who they should first be directed towards. So I definitely agree with you there, Scott. Caroline?
One of the things I've always valued and that I think is really important is playing out in the community and getting kids experiences on stages in front of audiences or whatever it is. So I think an organization like Grove, you know, when COVID is over and there are festivals and public places, I need help facilitating events or just finding opportunities for my students to get out there when they're in the community and they see how the community engages as an audience, or when they see little kids dancing to the music that they're creating, the younger kids can see that kids not much older than them are doing it, and it's not impossible and it's not intimidating, and it's also a lot more fun. It's so much fun for the parents to see their kids outside of the traditional performance venue that is our school cafeteria. And so that's what I would need help with, and that's what I'm looking forward to trying to figure out when we're all out of quarantine.
Thank you for that, Caroline. Chris, you had something?
Yeah, tying together what people talk about education and community here, I think the students are going to get interested in what they're exposed to in the schools. And if they're only exposed to traditional band and traditional choir, you know, there's a sense of community in those things. Some of those students join because they have a real interest in music. Some of them join because their friends are in it and they develop an interest in music because maybe the choir had a good tour that year or something, a good field trip that got them excited, and they joined to be with their friends. The next thing you know, they love music. So I think if we could get music educators open to expanding their thoughts and breaking down those walls between art music and popular music, and they're going to go into the schools and take a more diverse approach to music. I've seen this happening to some, you know, I've seen folks with a traditional band director background, and they teach two classes of band, and then they teach a garage band class. And they're teaching their students how to put loops together and all of that. I think we need more of those sort of things, even at a younger age too. You know, let's get some middle school programs where kids who are a little bit less set in their social groups, less set in their interests, but get them exposed to a wide variety of music, get them exposed to the communities within their school of other students who are interested with the same things they are, and see how it expands what they come out the other end with. As far as their interest. If we only expose them to narrow subsets of what we're saying, this is quality, that's what they're going to learn to love and appreciate and create. But if we can expand that to more diverse offerings in the schools, I think we'll get a more diverse set of graduates and student musicians and performers out in the community.
I agree. Victoria?
I wanted to sort of add to what Chris was saying. So one thing just with expanding, you know, opportunities for music, it sort of ties again into electronic music. A lot of these people who were in the beat making classes with me, they had to choose between football or band. You couldn't do both. This was in high school. And I just kind of feel like there's so many people who completely didn't experience music at all because of them having to choose one or the other. Some are just like, well, if I do band, then I have to have a private teacher, then I have to get an instrument, you know, and maybe we can't afford it. So there's all of those factors that come with it. And I think electronic music was a way for people to experience music without having to have the huge commitment of marching an entire season of marching band, or feeling like they have to choose one or the other. Yeah, so.
That's really a great point, because a lot of times you do have to make choices, and students should be able to explore multiple areas of their interest and not just be beholden to one. This has been a really fruitful and rich conversation. I would like to commend each of you, because based on what I've learned and based on what I've experienced as well, your job is to give kids, all of our job as educators really, is to give kids transformative experiences. And all of you are here today because you've done that proficiently. What I would like to ask to close us out today is, what was the transformative experience that you had growing up that made you feel as though music was something that you wanted to commit your life to? Caroline?
Go first. When I was in middle school, everybody knows middle school is pretty awful and nobody has confidence. And so my transformative experience is when my middle school band director kind of treated me like playing saxophone was something that I could do well. And I kind of thrived on his approval. And I spent all my time just wanting to get better and better. And that was the biggest thing that gave me confidence. And then that confidence led to friendships and experiences. And I knew that being a part of the music program was something really special that opened up all these opportunities. So I knew immediately that was something I wanted to share, that feeling of confidence with other middle schoolers specifically. So I only wanted to be a middle school band director.
Oh, I'm sorry, Steve. Thank you, Caroline, by the way. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I started really with guitar. It's probably in like maybe 5th grade or something. And this is back in the 60s. So, you know, I was sort of attracted to the sound of like groups like the Beatles, Rolling Stones, and then quickly became interested in more blues style, Albert King, B.B. King, Eric Clapton. And so starting with guitar and really learning, you know, scales and chords, really learning pretty much more by ear. It's really a different approach than, of course, traditional classical approach, reading music and everything. And then I had some pretty good guitar teachers in my teens that got me going with jazz and jazz chords at a pretty early age. And so just pretty serious about guitar. And then I actually had some, you know, problems with my home life, family life, and ended up leaving school, I think in 10th grade. And then just really focused on, you know, doing my own music. And then eventually I lived in California at this time, putting a band together when I got to my early 20s and going out and playing different venues. And still doing mostly jazz and blues and rock style. And then I ended up doing some traveling, sort of a long story, and came to Michigan in about 1979 and really decided I wanted to study classical guitar because I was pretty much familiar with jazz and what I had done on my own. And studied classical guitar and then went on and studied composition, got the degree in guitar, and then did a lot of teaching, private teaching on my own. So by that time I was pretty well, you know, set with being a musician basically. So
Sounds fantastic.
I just keep expanding from there. But I would go into Eastern was really good for me because I got more of the traditional training. because by starting off early with blues and jazz on the guitar, I had a feel for improvisation. And then there's a lot of guys that start with classical, people who start with classical training, and then later on they want to get into jazz, but they're always just really read the music. They have a difficult time with it. So it's sort of the other way around for me, and it's ended up working out pretty well. I'm able to, with a lot of the classical training, utilize that, of course, in my jazz teaching and just teaching in general. So,
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that.
okay.
Chris?
Yeah, I've got a different story. My first inspiration probably came from my older brother, who was a drummer. And I remember being in third grade a year before band started, and he was teaching me matched grip and traditional grip, and was convinced I'd be a drummer like him. And I think I broke his heart when I came home from band night with a saxophone. I was excited by the sound of the instrument, and I was like Zoot from the Muppets. But I was also in an excellent school music program. This school in third, fourth, and fifth grade would teach every student general music, how to play piano, guitar, and drums. And then they'd start you in band and orchestra, and you had a sense, you could read notes on different clefs, you had a sense of rhythm from learning percussion, and you were exposed to a wide number of things. And in fact, that first start of guitar is something I did for a long time. After my brother gave up on trying to turn me into a drummer, he said, well, we'll practice that guitar more and then we can jam. And I remember trying to figure out how to read guitar music, because they taught me how to read music on a saxophone, but I never knew how on a guitar. And when I figured out that guitar tab that I saw in those magazines was just the chromatic scale on each fret, I put it all together. But it broke down the walls within me that this instrument is different from that instrument, which is different than that instrument. They may have a hand position, they may have an embouchure, but it's all the same 12 notes. And all of us know this as musicians and educators. I remember being in school and seeing my high school band director pick up a clarinet and then a flute and then a saxophone, and he was really good on all of them. And I remember being blown away by that. And it still would be impressive, but at the end of the day, that's not all that difficult for a trained woodwind artist. So playing different instruments, you're still learning music. You learn music once and then you try to apply it in different areas. So I think there's a lot of inspirations people can find, and you're thinking that music is music.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Anyone else? Victoria?
Hi. So my inspiration came from when I was in middle school. Music got me through middle school. It was just awful, I'll be honest. I was awkward. I didn't have a whole lot of friends. My best friend was dying of cancer, and people like Sandy McConaughey, Fred Smith, Sean Dobbins gave me a voice without having to actually talk, which was great. And just learning how to play an instrument allowed me to express myself, because I was very introverted. I would never think I would be sitting up here speaking. And so music has helped me to be able to tell my story. And I feel like I would be nothing without it. So.
Wow. Amazing. Amazing. Who haven't we heard from? We haven't heard from Sean or Scott. Sean or Scott, can you answer that question? Sean, go ahead.
I got my start. First of all, Victoria keeps reminding me of how old I am. Thank you, Victoria. I appreciate that. Victoria and her brother are former students, but they're bigger than students to me. They're family. Her whole family is I have a huge amount of respect for their whole family, and I consider them family. So she comes from really her dad is great, and her mom is a great educator in her own right. So really great to be on a colleague call with a former student. So that's so cool. But just growing up, I will tell you, like, I was lucky enough to have mentors. I nearly didn't have many teachers. I had educators and mentors. And the difference for me, and it really shaped the way I wanted to approach music, is like teachers give assignments and say, here you go, get it done for your grade or not. Best wishes to you. But I think educators take the time to not only give you the work, but teach you how it's going to change your life. And they're invested in your future, and they're not thinking about the next year of your life. They're thinking of the next 50 years of your life. And so I was lucky enough. I had a private teacher when I first started, 6 years old. His name was Eric Alexius. He's the greatest private teacher I could have ever had. We would have lessons sometimes, and then he would take me out to fly model airplanes. And he spent the time with me to talk to me about performance, education, but a lot of times we never talked about music. He was just talking to me about life. And then as I progressed, I had a really great, one of my main mentors was the great Lewis Smith, Blue Note recording artist Lewis Smith. He was my middle school and high school jazz director. And he's the one that really said, man, you need to do this and do this as a profession. This is your calling. And believe that. And then so he was kind of the cheerleader in my corner. And then I had the person who I think was one of the most necessary people in my career when I was at Pioneer High School, and his name was Robert Albritton. And I used to laugh. I used to call him the Joe Clark of music. He was tough. He was really tough. But gave me, I think I wouldn't be where I was at without him, because he was a really great mentor. In my sophomore year, when I was kind of confused and trying to figure out life, he would have me come to his office every lunch hour, and he would just talk to me about what it means to be successful. Every lunch hour, he gave up his own time to just spend time with me and say, this is success. This is what you need to do. This is what I did. This is what it means to be successful in life. And he gave that up. Not a lot of people know that story about him, but he was tough in terms of his teaching approach, but was one of the most giving people I've ever been around. So, it's being around the transformative thing is being around educators and mentors, and just being a person that's you're dedicated to the future and well-being of your students, not just if they're getting through your class. And I think having that, it made me want to teach that way. That's what I wanted to be, and they inspired me. And my last part, I know it's just a little long-winded, but my last part is, one time when I was at Pioneer, I got in trouble in the library for talking too much. And so the librarian was smart. He said, if you were a football player, I'd go talk to the coach, but now I'm going to tell the band director. And that was like telling my mom, like, please don't do that. And so he went and told the mayor of Arbor and said, I worked years, and we have a tradition. There's a lineage here, and keep this going. And they look me in the face and said, are you telling me after all the years you've done, it dies with you? Everything was life changing. That conversation stuck with me, and I need to really evolve as a person, an example to myself and others. And it was those conversations. So when you plant certain seeds with young people, even though it doesn't harvest in front of you, it's going to harvest. So it's important to continue to plant seeds with young people all the time, because it's going to harvest. It's going to change your life. I'll be 45 years old this year, and I never forgot those conversations. So that was my biggest life-changing thing.
That's amazing. Before I was in this position, I was working at River Rouge High School, and I did a lot of discipline. And, it was one thing to deal with the football players. I rarely had to deal with the football players. They were really good and really great leaders. But the one thing you didn't want to do is cross the band guys. And shout out to Nigel Foster. He did not play. Scott Hawkins, did you have anything to add to that? What was your source of transformation?
Wow, what a tough story to kind of follow there.
Amazing, right?
I'm kind of fortunate. I come from a family of musicians. My family actually makes up a brass quintet altogether. And so I kind of grew up with being surrounded by it. My grandpa was a professional pianist. He played all around Detroit growing up, and I heard all the stories. Like he'd be playing in bars, and one time the Detroit Lions quarterback, Bobby Lane, came in and was tapping his old championship ring against the piano out of time while he was playing. Stories of him playing songs, and someone at the bar would start singing along, and he'd shift keys to kind of throw them off and just have fun with it. My dad been playing trumpet his whole life, played a lot of the shows. If you've ever seen something at the Fisher Theater in Detroit, played with guys like Wayne Newton, Earth, Wind and Fire, Chicago. and different bands of that type when they're touring. So, I mean, I got to see him doing all sorts of things and hear all these stories of him touring and him and his battle of the bands when he was in high school. And then I got to see my older brothers go through the band programs, and I was dragged to all the concerts and marching band competitions, and I just kind of followed suit. When I got to college, I was actually going to go into pre-law, and my dad said, no, you need to take at least one band class while you're doing that. And so I did, and I realized that was sort of the class where I felt mostly myself and sort of most alive. And then the next year I switched to music education and didn't really look back.
Excellent. Fantastic. So just really quick in summary, what I heard from you guys is the fact that music helped you to create memories. And I think that's what we want for our students. It helped you to find and identify your identity, or helped you kind of find yourself and find your niche, which is something that we also, as educators, is part of our role. I heard a lot of discussion about skills that were transferable across, not just in music, but things that translated to other areas. That's extremely important, but more so, all of you spoke about people in your lives who were difference makers. And that's what you guys are doing as well. And I just want to encourage you to continue that work. In lieu of the different situations and things that are going on, please just continue to do that work. This has been a fantastic conversation, and I appreciate your participation in it. So at this point, I'll turn it back over to Rick.
I'll tell you what, I had a really hard time not talking during that, because as a former educator, and well, not former educator, I taught in a classroom for 10 years, but listening to the language and the stories and all your personal perspectives. I was not a music educator. I taught English, but I really just loved the conversation. It was inspiring to me, and I know there were quite a few people watching and listening in the entire time. And I think that it's just a reminder to me the amazing work that you all do, and we have like such a wide experience of educators from the K-12 arena all the way up through college and beyond. And I love Rod's summary. I think that's it, and I think the difference makers are in the room right now, and I appreciate the work that you all do. And as a father, knowing that you guys are doing the work that you're doing, it makes me excited for their engagement in their education. So I would just add, for me, transformation wise, music started very early, and it is because of educators like you that drove me to the point where I'm at. And creating something like Grove Studios. I could go all the way back to my kindergarten teacher, who helped me get over some stage fright. Even though I said I wanted to be on stage, she was able to help me get over stage fright and beyond. My middle school and high school choir director. I didn't start playing an instrument till later in life. But Mr. McMacken was instrumental. I mean, he took us into some very professional situations at an early age. We got to travel to Toronto and stuff like that and perform. And that really just continued to light me on fire. And even though I didn't pursue it in college, music has always been a part of my life. It's a very big and strong part of my life. And I continue to perform. And I credit that to my family. I have musicians in the family, but by and large, the educators in my life have made a huge impact. So you guys are amazing. Keep up the good work. And in this current situation, I know I'm very intimately aware of some of the challenges you're facing on the other side of that screen. To teach music digitally is difficult, but I think you guys highlighted how it's also enhanced some possibilities. And I think when we can all get back in rooms together, I wonder if there's going to be some of this that sticks, and we're going to realize the continuing power that technology can kind of assist us in doing the work that you all do. So thank you again. I actually have one last question, and then we'll break from there. but it's a question I like to ask during each Grove sessions. And I will also mention this, Rod, that was an amazing facilitation. You are a true professional, and I admire you as well, being an educator yourself. And now we can add professional facilitator and podcaster to the list. So,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely.
I'm with it.
You know, there's an uncertainty right now. You know, do we go back? Do we not go back to, you know, full time? Do we have blended instruction? Do we do this? How safely can we go back? So much uncertainty. What do each of you feel is a certainty, whether it's professionally or something broader about the world? Hey, Chris, I see you unmuted. Let's go with you first.
I think it's certain that art and music will find a way.
Love it.
And artists and musicians will find a way to make it work. It may be different. It may not be the same as it used to be, but we'll find a way.
Love it. Can do. Caroline.
Similar to what Chris said, even if we're stuck at home, kids are going to be listening to music, kids are going to be creating things, and they're going to need some kind of guidance, and we will be here to help guide them.
Amazing. Sean.
We will appreciate each other that much more, and we will appreciate once we're back in on both sides that much more.
Absolutely, for sure. Hey, Steve, what do you think?
Well, yeah, music is still a certainty, regardless of you're just, you know, practicing in your own room or, you know, doing a performance. And then just continued development and learning too. I mean, there's always more to learn. I've been at it for quite a while, and I'm still learning. So I think that's a certainty.
I love that. Yeah, we talk about lifelong learning a lot in education and life. I totally agree that. I love it. Never stop learning, right? Victoria.
A certainty for me is growth, development, and also just learning. This pandemic has taught me so much about music. It's pushed me to a point that I never thought I could even reach. I never thought I would be teaching virtual piano lessons. But it's also taught me so much about myself. And my favorite Frida Kahlo quote is, at the end of the day, you can endure much more than you think you can. And that's what this pandemic has taught me. And that's the certainty that I have.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. I've really enjoyed everybody's, input on this. Rod, do you want to take a?
I think that if I've erred in my life, it's always been that I've erred on the side of humanity. And at some point we figure it out, and it's difficult and it's tough. But we figure it out and we keep pressing on as individuals. And, you know, as a tribe, we just continue to move forward. So my belief is that through all of this transition, the thing I am certain about is we will figure it out, but we have to get out of our own way first. That's all I got to say.
I appreciate that. Yeah, we can certainly get in our own way, right? Who am I missing? Did Scott? Yeah.
I hate to follow all the positivity, but unfortunately, I see a wider gap between those who have and those who have not. At least, sort of in our situation. I mean, that's not saying that we're not going to try our butts off, making sure that we can close those gaps and make sure that education is still equitable for our students. But I mean, seeing what some people have and their setups compared to what we have is a mountain sometimes.
Well, I would hope that we can all keep driving that conversation forward and really putting more pressure on funding sources to lift up those inequities. I know, having been in education for 17 years and having seen a lot of the inequities, I'm hopeful that we can still continue to raise the issue and find ways to not only just get creative, but to really impress upon our leadership at the state and federal level to shore up the inequities where they exist, because I think that's society's job, and our leadership is in charge of a big part of that, because they also write the checks. So I appreciate that perspective. I don't think it's negative to bring it up. I think, I think what is to tag onto that, I think is what is certain is that as educators and music industry professionals, we should be bringing these points up in the appropriate forums and fighting for young people, because, it might be cliche to say, but they are our future and they are going to be future educators and future leaders. So I really appreciate everybody taking the time. I know how busy you all are. Grove Studios is grateful for your time. And we look forward to working with you in some capacity and supporting your work. I heard some great ideas when Rod asked the question. And certainly, Eric, as Director of Community Engagement, will be reaching out to each of you as we can create new opportunities, performance opportunities, and other things. We've got some exciting projects in the works as it relates to community engagement, and look forward to sharing that with everybody. So thanks again to the panel. I'm going to just do a brief outro and we'll leave the live situation. If you guys just hang around for like 30 seconds after I drop the live situation, we'll have a quick chat, and then you guys will enjoy the rest of your nights, hopefully. So just wanted to let everybody know that we've got some upcoming events, virtual and otherwise. We've got Shay Halliwell coming up tomorrow on Grove Sessions for a performance, an in-studio performance and an interview to follow. And then we have Danny Darling on Friday, September 4th, 7 p.m. Another fantastic singer-songwriter. We have Kenyatta Rashan on Friday, September 4th at 7 p.m. And then our very special once a year and very different annual Equinox party celebrating our 3 years in existence on Railroad Street in Ypsi. A very small, socially distanced audience is invited. We can only have less than 25 people at the event. It's outdoors in the courtyard, so we'll be announcing details on Facebook and other platforms very soon. We're going to also be live streaming that event, and we are really excited for it because we have an amazing lineup. We're going to have Chirp, the Steve Summers Band, Lonnie Stump and AJ Lynn, Giacomo, Kai 5, Edison Hollow, Violet Soul, Las Drogas, Deontay Visible, and DJ Nitro. It's going to be an amazing performance. We hope everybody will join us either virtually or, if you feel comfortable, to our socially distanced outdoor courtyard experience. So once again, thanks everybody for joining. This is Grove Sessions. My name is Rick Coughlin, co-founder and CEO, and we wish you all a good night and have a great weekend